Since 2011, LACI's been focused on helping clean tech startups and growing the green economy. For the last 2 decades, I've been working with citizens and cities to fight climate change. Now I've turned my attention to helping companies. Our 3 priorities are advancing zero-emissions transportation, clean energy, and smart city solutions. We want to inspire you to come up with the next big idea to fight climate change.
We're making new ways to light up LA.
We give people a smarter way to commute.
We make tableware that's good for people and good for the planet.
We're transforming air travel by building quiet, zero-emission planes.
We want to reduce America's dependence on foreign oil and create a world powered by renewable energy.
LACI will continue the work it's known for, supporting clean tech startups and helping them commercialize their technologies.
Measuring our company's efforts on climate action and helping maximize their impact.
But we can do more.
The core DNA of LACI isn't just about creating clean tech startups. We're building an inclusive green economy by unlocking innovation through incubation, transforming markets, and enhancing community.
We're building relationships with industry leaders in key technology sectors.
Developing pilot projects in mobility and clean energy.
We'll engage the innovative spirit of LA's creative community.
Will provide the spark for future entrepreneurs and the leadership LA will need when facing the challenges of the future.
Building a future that belongs to all of us.
And create a clean tech ecosystem that looks like the people of LA.
Simply put, we can't do this without you.
Whether you bring your financial support,
your knowledge and networks,
or just bring yourself,
you belong here.
Join this adventure.
This energy.
This community.
We're building an inclusive green economy for the people of Los Angeles.
And if we can make it happen here,
we can make it happen everywhere.
Join us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Every morning across America, a special group of people wakes up to make sure that 57 million kids get safely to school. People like Olivia. She's responsible for moving thousands of kids from home to school with nothing but her buses and a routing plan. Most days, that plan flies out the window. Olivia's already short on drivers, and she's responsible for more and more non-routine trips all the time. How is she supposed to keep up? That's why Olivia uses HopeSkipDrive. HopeSkipDrive helps schools and districts manage the specialized challenges of modern pupil transportation. With HopeSkipDrive, Olivia can easily request guaranteed trips whenever a sedan makes more sense than a bus. Real-time progress alerts, live ride monitoring, and our promise that every care driver has been carefully screened means that students get the safest ride outside of the yellow bus. Olivia can even edit or cancel a trip with just a few clicks, without even picking up a phone. HopeSkipDrive gives Olivia more drivers, more flexibility, and the peace of mind that all her kids are in transit to a bigger, brighter future. So whether you're a district who needs options, an independent school seeking to grow enrollment, or a government agency with vulnerable students who need better access, HopeSkipDrive's got you covered. Request your free consultation at HopeSkipDrive.com today.
Are you an early stage founder with a big idea, but no capital to make it real? Founders like Chris here know that getting funding can be hard. Chris knows that only 1% of founders will get venture capital investment, and she won't qualify for a bank loan at this early stage. She doesn't have a lot of savings or wealthy connections. So where can she turn for the $40,000 she needs to get her business started? Welcome to Chisos. Chisos provides a brand new type of funding for idea, early stage, and side hustle founders. Our unique investment contract called a Convertible Income Share Agreement, or CISA, provides fair funding for founders. The investment is more flexible than other debt or equity-based funding options because it's designed with founders like you in mind. Chisos equalizes opportunities, activates ideas, invests in the future. Apply today. Visit www.chisos.io to get started.
Welcome back to No Code Week's finale. This is the finale of the 2-week-long conference. We have heard from so many great tech tools that are helping revolutionize the no-code space. And this panel that we are having today will wrap up our 2-week No Code Week panel. So what we have going on now is that we've heard from Adalo, we've heard from Bubble, we've heard from Tapcart, we've heard from Softer, we've heard from Airtable, we've heard from Typeform. And there is no way that we cannot complete No Code Week without hearing from the people who make big investments into companies like this, idea makers, and they are revolutionizing this space. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to the VC Fundraising Panel 2021 Emergence of No Code, as well as having all of these great speakers with us. So I'm going to start going with them one by one to introduce them. So first, I'm going to introduce to the stage, we're going to have Jessica Salinas. She is from the New Media Ventures. She is the VP of Investment. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Laurel?
Good, good, good. Happy to have you here. We also have Sedale Turbovsky from OpenGrants.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello, hello. We have Will Stringer from Chisos Capital.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. And we have Adriana Embus from LACI, LA Clean Tech Incubator.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to not botch your last name, but we have Danny Cortenraede from our in-studio ventures. We have Adam Hardej from OnePager, Open Scout. We have Bryan Landers from Maker Studios. And last but not least, we also have Todd Eldridge from Include Ventures. Hello, everyone. We will be having one more guest join us here shortly from HopeSkipDrive, Qiana Patterson. So we'll get it going real fast here. How's everybody doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having us.
Good. Happy to have you guys here. Happy to kick off this conversation. I will let you guys all go around the room, this virtual room, right? And introduce yourselves to everyone who is listening, and tell us a little bit about yourselves. So I will let the two ladies go first. We'll have Adriana go from LACI and Jessica go from New Media Ventures. Take it away, ladies.
Awesome. Well, nice to see everyone. It's so great to just be here in the virtual room. I miss being in person, but we'll have to do with this. My name is Adriana Embus. I work at the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, heading up our investor relations alongside the wonderful Taj, who's here as well. And I manage our impact fund and our debt fund and really help accelerate clean tech within our region. So happy to be here.
And I am Jessica Salinas. I am a first-generation Mexican-American, and I am originally from Texas and now live in LA, where I am the Vice President of Investments at New Media Ventures, an early-stage seed fund that invests in activists and entrepreneurs that are moving democracy forward. My career has been around social impact, the intersection of social impact, tech, recently venture capital, and always with, I think, a goal of centering Black and brown populations. So happy to be here.
Yeah, guys, you can jump in. Taj, I see you got your Zen going over there. You wanna kick it off for the guys. Taj, you just had a huge milestone yourself. Taj is also an advisor in StartupStarter. So yeah, Taj, take it away.
Absolutely. Yeah, I promise this is not marijuana. This is a diffuser. You need to set the mood right. So I'm Taj Eldridge. I serve as Senior Director for Investment LACI with Adriana. And then also what you see there is include, I recently with two other partners launched a $250 million targeted fund of funds to invest in Black and brown and women fund managers to increase that piece of it. So I'm really glad to be here with these amazing folks that I've known and that I work with. Thank you, guys. And I guess if I'm popcorning, the person to my Brady Bunch, the person to my left, Bryan, you can go next, I guess.
Well, thank you, Taj. Amazing. Hey, everybody. I'm Bryan Landers, general partner at Make Studios, where we invest in idea stage founders and go from idea to customer revenue within 6 months. And I'm also a venture partner at Backstage Capital, where we invest in underrepresented founders. It's good to be here. I'm excited to talk with you all. And I will pick Sedale.
Thank you. Sedale Turbovsky. I'm CEO, co-founder at OpenGrants. And our focus is really on democratizing access to non-dilutive grant funding as an alternative capital source for founders. So we connect early stage startups, early to kind of Series A startups, to government grant funding as that kind of first check-in to help them dilute or help them not dilute their ownership in the company and de-risk their venture. And also really focused on improving equity and accessibility to those funds. So that's what we do here. And I will pick Will, who's at least in the room as I'm looking at it right beneath me. So
perfect. Looks like the order of people is actually the same for everyone in this platform versus something like Zoom. Yeah, Lorel, thanks for having me. Will Stringer, one of the founders of Chisos and Chisos Capital. We provide early stage companies, idea stage companies, side hustle founders with checks up to $50,000. So we use something called a convertible income share agreement, which is really two pieces. One's an income share agreement with the founder. The other is a safe in the business. We utilize that instrument to be able to invest really at the napkin stage or, even the earliest stage of side hustle businesses. So that's Chisos. And I guess I'll popcorn over to Adam.
Hey, everybody. I think maybe only non-investor kind of in the group here, but founder of OnePager and OpenScout. OnePager is a tool for founders to bring all their information together under a custom URL. So we work with a lot of fundraising founders. Most recently, we're running an investor day actually today with over 100 companies raising over $100 million using OnePager, right? So it's kind of a competitor doxend, maybe you could say, where it's something that a founder is going to use to communicate with investors, and through that, we communicate with a lot of kind of different founders who are trying to figure it out and kind of have a view on it that way. OpenScout, which uses OnePager, is a non-exclusive scout program. We're just recently partnered with AWS, and we have over 150 scouts at over 100 different universities throughout the country. So I think we say that we're the largest non-exclusive scout program in the world, but I don't think anyone's competing for that title with us. But so we still say it anyways. But yeah, that's OnePager and that's OpenScout. And I'll go to the last guy here, Danny, right above.
Thanks for having me. Founder of In Studio Ventures. So we're running a venture studio, so not a standard VC. So we have a high involvement in scaling early stage startups. We just launched our own fund together with Lead, and Lead is founded by the grandchildren of Adi Dassler, so the founder of Adidas. So we're focusing mainly in sports, tech, and media companies. And thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
I was on mute. Yes, thank you guys all for being here. And I didn't even tell you guys who I am. My name is Lorel Scott. I am the co-founder and head of partnerships and platform at StartupStarter. We are a startup that provides community. And on top of that, we also are revolutionizing entrepreneurship by trying to democratize it by creating an avenue for founders, investors, and service providers to connect in one place, which is where we have partnered with multiple individuals from this space and on this panel. And yeah, again, with everything going on, 2021 unicorns and the emergence of no code is what we are talking about today. It's a very conversational piece. I will start it off by asking you guys this question. So 2020 COVID pandemic changed the way we do business, and so many ideas have emerged from the people who may have been, ejected from their workforce and have more time to like brand or build their ideas. Where do you guys see the emergence of no code taking off, here in 2021 and beyond?
I'll kick it off. I think that, in 2020, over 800,000 businesses were decimated. A number of people were out of work. A number of people were having issues. And we've seen how the federal government has provided for a lot of the citizens in the United States, where people are saying, how can we take this opportunity in our own hand? I think this whole experience has made people think about, well, maybe I need to start a company. Maybe I need to go there. And I think in the past, there has been fear about, maybe I'm not a non-technical founder, what I need to do. And I think no code has empowered a lot of people to come into this space and to think about starting their own businesses and making innovative products and services to make it happen. So I think there's been a confluence of all these things coming together that has enabled a lot of people to look at no code as a path forward.
Yeah, and real quick, I'm going to just pause real quickly here. We do have Qiana Patterson, who's also joined us. She is from HopeSkipDrive, and she is the Vice President of Strategic Development. So welcome to the stage, Qiana Patterson.
Hey, everyone.
Hi. We literally just finished up introductions and asked the first question. So I'll give you a moment. You go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about HopeSkipDrive.
Yeah, my name is Qiana Patterson. As Laurel said, I am the VP of Strategic Development for HopeSkipDrive. We are the leading and innovative rideshare and mobility company for kids and other vulnerable populations. And that's who I am and what I do.
Great. So I'll kick off the question again, just so everybody can hear it again. So again, 2021 COVID pandemic has changed the way that people are doing business, and so many ideas have emerged from those individuals who may have been, ejected from the workforce. So where do you guys see the emergence of no code taking off here through 2021 and beyond? Taj, you went already. Who wants to go next?
I can jump in just a little bit, and we talked about it a little bit before, but I feel like no code in a lot of ways is really just kind of the next step in what software has done for a long time, which is make it a lot easier to launch new companies. So I don't necessarily, and I think that, through this pandemic, we've just seen that kind of catalyst of people, like as Taj mentioned, kind of going in and wanting to build something new. So I don't necessarily think of it as anything like totally brand new, as much as just another step forward within software where you can get your ideas out there faster than you were able to before, which has just, kind of been a part of the startup scene for a long time. It's what initially kind of created a startup the idea of the garage startup is that you could do that back when it was still, everyone was kind of writing their own code. Now everyone's, copying and pasting different other people's code from GitHub together with no code. It just kind of seems like the next iteration of that, rather than something separate from code or from that path that we've been on for a long time.
I'll add something too here, which I really appreciate both Adam and Taj's points, in that I think a lot of what we represent as a panel, but what no code represents is really kind of the democratization of accessing tech. Right? And tech for a long time has been an industry that hasn't necessarily welcomed folks from a variety of backgrounds, right? And so I think what no code is introducing is the fact that anyone could potentially learn and run their own company, right? Learn how to and run their own company. And that's incredible. Having seen everything that was impacted by COVID, and then also thinking about, recent developments of how jobs and industries are kind of overlapping. It's really incredible to see this new change.
And I'll add to all of your points because I absolutely agree that it's democratizing access to tech. And I'll add to that what we do know, and what came to mind, Laurel, when you asked the question, was the fact that we are seeing more businesses come out of the pandemic and COVID, but there's a data point I keep going back to, and it's that Black and brown people, so Black and Latinx, the Black and Latinx population is exponentially and significantly more entrepreneurial already than any other population demographic in the United States. So I think what the combination of the democratization of tech and this kind of already existing entrepreneurial spirit that now has to, out of necessity, now has to kind of increase. I think, to answer your question, where I think there's a bit of heat is supporting the small to medium, actually, Black and brown business owners, and kind of building on those. So I think that's one area. And then I think another area that I'm probably biased in, because I am in this segment and we invest in this segment, is in media. So in media and narrative, as well as in civic tech, we're starting to see, civic tech really depends on campaigns, right? And campaigns are temporary, they're by season, and therefore you maybe can't have a developer that's there for a long time. So just in thinking of where no code would fit into civic tech, I think it's becoming instrumental as a tool to continue moving the progressive movement forward.
And I would just add that, I think what it does is it really does level the playing field of who can, in the present and in the future, solve problems, right? And for a long time, we said that the people who could solve our problems of today and tomorrow are those people who hold the keys of the engineers, or only the scientists, only certain people. And it left those of us who are not necessarily coders, but are creative thinkers or problem solvers outside of being able to be a part of solving those problems. And I think it just, allows for a greater diversity and inclusive set of problem solvers that we know arguably actually have a greater impact when you have a diverse group of people who are tackling a problem. And I think this is what no code absolutely does.
Just to kind of double down on that point, one thing that I think is really cool is not only that it allows for that democratization and access to problem solving, but also just better storytelling. So I've seen some founders who are on a path to build just incredible solutions, and even though they don't have the whole thing figured out, they've been able to put together really functional MVPs that are incredible and build storytelling with, behind the data and how that's executing and impacting a community. And I think that's really, one of the things that I think is really incredible about it is all of a sudden, I'm seeing people who, if you gave them the same problem to solve 10 years ago, would have just struggled and had to pull in a co-founder and raised funding at really gnarly terms and gotten nowhere maybe. And now they're able to, there's a company that I work with that's thrown off somewhere around $7 million in ARR on a no code stack. And, they're about to go raise a round, and they're going to scale up, and there's a lot of things they have to solve, but they've been able to get, really far down that road without writing any code at all.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is all the different things that you can do with no code. I mean, even when you're talking about helping bring more ideas from the Black and brown community. I mean, at StartupStarter, we are a very diverse minority built company, but we use a lot of no code tools to run and to build our ideas out, right? To test things, to build our MVP. And a lot of these new idea makers are doing the same thing, but they now have all these different tools that are being utilized that they can actually plug and play, drag and drop to make their idea come to life. Do you guys see, I mean, we know that previously there was a lot of investment in type blue collar type of investments. Do you guys see VCs investment going more in the direction of making sure that they have a good amount of businesses that they're investing in the Black and brown community?
I would say yes. I mean, that's one of my focuses. One of the things that I've been doing with Tama Capital, which is a fund that I've created really around supporting a diverse group of founders and getting more LPs that look like all of us on the cap table of some of the best and brightest companies that are coming out of our tech ecosystems throughout the globe, is to ensure that there's just greater diversity, and we're backing ambitious founders, which is why I named my fund Tama Capital. Tama means ambition in Swahili. And, it's super important. Again, I go back to what are the problems that we face today and who do we want to solve them? And as a good steward of allocating LP dollars, I need to ensure that I'm finding the best and the brightest and the teams that actually have the ability to do it. And I don't think, as a fund manager, I'm doing my LPs a service if I'm only investing in a single group of people. It just doesn't make any sense statistically. And so for me, it's an imperative. It's not a nice to have. It is absolutely a must have in my portfolio construction.
And I just want to double down on that. You brought up statistics. It's something that we're very focused on at OpenGrants, of just building out the fact that like our research and development dollars from the United States and also from like corporate venturing groups who we work with go to like predominantly very homogenous looking groups of people. And the cool thing that we're seeing is a lot of these fund managers and folks are really starting to like respond well, at least to the, we come to them and we tell them basically, hey, you guys are really bad at picking good companies at this stage. You should really just be using this lottery system and weight it so that you have the right, pipeline of diverse founders and the right groups in your pipeline so that you're making better decisions. Just based on the data, it's going to work better. And folks are starting to respond to that. And I think that's, really encouraging for us. In fact, we were working with a German company and their venture arm, which, as far as traditional LPs go, who have a certain way of thinking, they have a very sort of rigid approach to things. And they were really open to this idea. And they're like, look, yeah, if the statistics prove out, math and science for the win, right? So just a return to science on all fronts, I think, is a good thing in this space.
I guess I would represent a little bit of like the sort of other piece of this, which is like the data. So, I think what was the stat? Like last year, 9% of funding went to women. This is half the population, right? And 2% went to women-only led teams. So while I totally agree with everyone who's mentioned this before, like I think we are kind of on a rising tide, and I really hope that's true. And there's certainly a lot more energy going into emerging managers who are sort of from non-traditional backgrounds. We have a bunch on this panel. So I think, it's very promising, but the data shows that things aren't that great right now. And we have a lot of work to do. Like, pretty much all the effort of everything you're seeing going into diversity, equity, and inclusion needs to be there and needs to be, resources put into that and growth to make a dent in those numbers, because we are just not even close yet. So I just wanted to represent that. It's a bit of a downer of a thought, but like, that's sort of what the challenge we're facing.
It's true. It's moving about as slow as that tanker that's stuck in the Suez Canal right now. I mean, it's the truth, right? It really is moving at a snail's pace, and it seems stuck. And if we don't acknowledge the truth and say it for what it is, then you don't have any way recourse, right? You don't know how to solve that problem. So we have to be honest about that. Women actually in our world are actually more than half of the population. We're about 52%. So the stats are way off, right? Way off, and we're not moving fast enough. So thank you, Bryan, for acknowledging that.
I think something too that kind of ties into what Jessica said way earlier is that, and what Sedale said as well, is that I think that yes, like the stats as they stand right now are really bad for where we are, but then the stats look really good for the opportunity for the investors that do go that way, right? Like the investors that do support these diverse founders are seeing, quantifiably better returns. And that I feel like becomes really exciting, where you get into the space of like, you want to make more money for your LPs, you have to recognize this, right? And you have to go this way. And I think that the more that data gets built up, the more it can become this just like, it almost it'd be not that it already isn't irresponsible not to, but from a money perspective, right? For people who are just like, you're crunching the numbers on this, like when Sedale's talking about the German company, right? To talk in, this is where the money is. This is this like population of entrepreneurial people that are getting, lower valuations, that are getting, that there's more opportunity here. There's better deals here. And for a short period of time, until hopefully that tide does rise and it's not as much of an opportunity. Whereas in this kind of short period of time, hopefully that's something that can gain momentum as more data flows into that being like an obviously right decision on a bunch of different levels, right? Outside of just what's right and wrong and into what's, profitable.
Yeah, I'm so happy you guys are mentioning data too, because Bryan, to your point, before you brought that up, I was going to bring something similar up, which is 2% of venture funding gets invested into women, but then 0.64% gets invested into Black and brown women. If we acknowledge intersectionality, that's when we really get into the meat of the things, right? I think right now, currently, in the way that venture's happening, it's so incredible, to y'all's point, right? It's so incredible to see all the growth that's happening and recognize where we are, and also recognize that each system needs some reform, right? Both the venture that's going out to the startups themselves, the founders, and the actual funds that are being run, right? Funds of funds. If we also think about women or queer folk or veterans, or, if we're thinking about these intersectional identities, people are really taking a bet on folks like these, right? And it's because of these conversations that we're only opening up, right? It's so crazy to me to think that I'm on, these conversations are kind of my everyday, but it's like, no, this is a very small percentage of the conversations that are happening in venture right now. So it's really important to just continue talking about it.
And I think we also have to recognize the change in venture itself, right? Because now you have more Black and brown investors, or those who are managing funds that are investing in these Black and brown businesses and companies and ideas as well. I know, Taj, with what you have with your new fund coming out, like you have an impact space where you want to make sure that you're investing in these types of companies in the impact space, and Black and brown companies as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole idea is that, and I think somebody mentioned it, is that as investors, those of us here as investors, our job is to make money. And we have to always think about every investment that we make has an impact. And I think for me, what's interesting as a former founder, I would hear investors all the time talk about disruption of industries. But our industries as investors has not been disrupted. We're like anti-disruption for our own self. You have a great fund like NDVC that really did some really interesting things that, for whatever reason, couldn't continue. And I think that the next generation of fund managers, of entrepreneurs and investors, I think are going to look at things a lot differently. I'm proud of things like what Backstage is doing with Republic and the connection there. I'm proud of the things with rolling funds, and I've heard with these income-based or revenue share-based agreements with companies. So I think it's some exciting times, but I think also too what's going to happen is that, and I'm going to say this colloquially, I come from a family of hustlers. And when I went to college, I left a hustling piece behind. I think all of us who come from families of hustlers need to have that with us and bring it to this industry so we can do things differently and make things differently as well.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, this is really great. This is a really great conversation. I think that we have to continue to have these conversations and continue to give statistics and continue to give backgrounds in what investing in Black and brown businesses, minority businesses will do for the growth of these idea makers. So as investors, whether it's grants and helping people get grants, whether it's the revenue-based financing, or Will over at Chisos Capital, there are different tools that people are using, but there's also tools that VCs use as well. What are some of the tools? I know, Adam, you could probably speak to this and jump in this first. Like, what are some really good tools that you guys are using to find new companies and ideas to invest in?
Well, I think you kind of called me out there, and I'll jump in. I'll do my best a little bit. In terms of tools, I think it's different from the founder side and the VC side. But one thing I will kind of touch on from the VC side, I think other people in here will have a better sense of it. But I just know the conversations that we had as a tool for founders that's really digitally focused. OnePager before the pandemic was like, sure, maybe just send me the deck or come to the live thing that we do or whatever it might be. And then after the pandemic started, it's like, oh, we really need this. Or we're very open. It was kind of this catalyst that formed. They were open to these new sources, like these new channels, new ways of receiving information, new ways of digesting information. That's super exciting because I do think that, that maybe that's, obviously the pandemic's been really hard in a lot of ways, in a lot of really serious ways. In the VC community and the VC context specifically, I think it's kind of given a shake generally to everyone of like VCs were sitting around like, wait a minute, like I need to figure out a new way to interact with people on a digital basis. And that's opened up like kind of new ways for them, or them having to find new ways to find deals, find new ways to kind of interpret and to take in deals. So that's on the VC side. Again, I think that other people in this room will have a better sense of like the tools that they use. On the founder side, to talk to that specifically, I think that the word storytelling has gotten brought up here, and I think that's really relevant to no code. The ability to show, not tell, to the ability to like move past the PDF attached to an email kind of world that we've lived in for like a hilariously long time is really exciting, and it opens up the ability for a founder to move through more contacts faster, right? So to think about it as a sales process where I need to talk to 100 different investors for this to get done right. In the past, with emails, maybe in-person stuff, that took a long time to like get through those contacts. Even the best companies in the world don't have high conversion rates with investors, right? Like everyone's heard the stories of Airbnb getting turned down 1 million times, whatever it might be. So tools that founders can use now, like OnePager or DocSend or different platforms, are just kind of connecting with more people faster, like Twitter even, you could say, so that you could get to that 100 number faster, of 100 people that understand the basics of what you're building, and then you can move down the funnel a little bit. So I think that tools like obviously OnePager, that's my favorite in the space, but then there's a lot of other stuff, right? Like DocSend, or like building a Notion memo, or building like kind of the audience first approach where you kind of bring a group together around what you're building, kind of show them incrementally what's happening. It's something that's really great in the no code space as well. So that when you do launch, you do go to fundraising, you're actually kind of empowering this audience that you've built to then share what you've built because they love it so much already, kind of on a wider basis within these kind of social platforms that weren't built for fundraising, but any place that there are, people congregating, like Clubhouse, like Twitter, like LinkedIn, is a place for a founder to build an audience that might have that investor for them to, drive towards that 100-person number. So I'll let someone else jump in on the kind of VC side of it, but on the founder side, definitely a lot of early adopters, just kind of helping them get their story out there more efficiently to more people, so that they can, kind of work with that conversion rate more feasibly than if you had to, shake hands with every one of those 100 investors.
Yeah, and let me jump in. I think to your question about, how can founders or how is founders engaging with investors in this space and in this area, I think the investors that have been better positioned to invest in the pandemic were the crowdfunding folks, because they did diligence all online already. They were already online, so this was nothing to them. While VCs were going crazy about how to manage Zoom and all sort of stuff, they said, I got it. So I like that piece of it. The other thing is that if you are a founder, I think things like StartupStarter have been, great opportunities to engage and meet with new investors and what have you. And to Adam's point, Definitely. I think the days of, and I give this analogy, and people have heard me give this analogy before. People know I love music. You know, if you're a fan of music, if you remember Boyz II Men, when they were founded, they went to New Edition and they would sing in front of them, what have you. That's the old way of VC, right? Today, T.I., this rapper named T.I. said, if somebody comes and some raps and sing to me, I'm telling them, stop. Show me your SoundCloud. Show me your Instagram. Show me all this other stuff. And that's the area that we're in now. No longer is it just let me do a napkin or what have you. There are so many things out there, including no code and social media and everything else, that you could build a presence and a community. And I think that's a huge part of what we're seeing now. StartupStarter is a community. There are so many other things as communities as well. And I think that's what's going to move things forward also, if you're a founder trying to get in touch with investors.
I was going to say as well, Taj, the rise of micro communities during the pandemic has been a huge support for VCs and for founders. I'm part of not only StartupStarter, but like Women in VC, bunch of founders, the Slack channel too that was started for underestimated founders. And I'll also add that I've seen in terms of like cool tools that have been used, I've seen people like use Loom, right? And that kind of takes the accessibility approach where it's like video based, and they're like sending it over to like VCs. I've seen, you know, there be a change also in like the VC attitude of you have to come to me, and have, you know, VCs now on like Twitter that have their type forms, right? Like, hey, here, and then they have like cool, I don't know, tools that after someone sends it in, it sends an email, and, you know, all no code. So those are other just like ideas and things that I've seen in the past like year or so that I think will also help out the founders and creating the community.
Yeah, I want to jump in there, what Jessica was saying. So part of that democratization trend we talked about is also happening not only for, you know, like finding investors. There are all these sort of open source databases you can find now with thousands of investors, even by, you know, geography or specific sectors they invest in. Visible.vc is a whole, you know, sort of platform around that kind of access. So that side is being democratized. But then even like the tools, you mentioned tools for VC, and that's where I thought you were going, Lorel, is like very similar to the tools that founders are using. So Jessica was just talking about, I think like Zapier, which is where I used to work, sort of the glue between other apps to sort of automate your workflow. And people are sort of opening up the sort of stack, their sort of tech stack for how they're doing deals and, you know, tracking people and all this kind of stuff. But I would just say one last thing, which is one of the sort of superstars of all this, I think very related to no code, is Airtable. I don't know exactly why, because you could have shared like on a Google Sheet before, like the same kind of information, but something sort of has changed with the way people share information through Airtable, specifically for founders and connecting founders and investors. So shout out to Airtable for all their good work there.
Yeah, I'll pick up on the Airtable thread. You know, when I was first starting Chisos, before my technical co-founder came on, I was hacking away at Airtable. I was able to easily pull together a form, pull together, you know, a spreadsheet in order to take in applications for people looking for these early stage checks, and all no code, all, you know, able for me to do it with a non-technical background. So Airtable is a big one. I think mixture of Zapier, Integromat, Webflow, all of these different tools are things that we use as a kind of hybrid startup / VC ourselves to both execute our business as well as kind of find other founders and allow founders to find us and give us their information in an automated and efficient way.
Yeah, I love how everyone's saying all of this, because what that really highlights is that it's just removing the barriers, right? It really is, because before it was all about who you knew, how you knew them, a particular network, if you went to an event, if you went to the country club or any of those kinds of things. And now what we're seeing is that you don't need any of that in order to find really good founders. And you shouldn't have to need any of that to find really great investors that you want to back you, right? And so, there's a prominent investor on Twitter, Dale, who likes to talk about banning warm intros, right? And this is really an amalgamation of this idea that you needed to know of the right person to get to the right table. And now what we're doing, and Will just talked about it, like having applications, like having the things that he can source a lot of really great deals, and remove that sort of like, am I going to say the right thing? Am I going to know the right person in order to get to pitch my idea and the problem that I'm attempting to solve? So I really love hearing what everyone is doing, because what that really does is lower the barriers for many more founders to get through.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And you guys speak of like lowering the barrier, right? And I think that that's one of the main things like we focus on at StartupStarter as well. And the reason why we wanted to make sure that Airtable was included in No Code Week, and they have a workshop that they did earlier this week, is because like the barrier to entry in all different directions, it's changing, right? So, and we want to make it easier for people to connect in one place and in one individual place. And whether that's creating a CRM like we do inside of StartupStarter, or a place for investors to be able to come in and actually see all the companies that we work with, or investors come and see the partnerships or the other VCs that we work with, because it's all about collaboration, right? So whether it is Will collaborating after this with Bryan, or Adam collaborating after this with Sedale, it's all about the creating and opening that door for people to collaborate and have idea makers be able to come to one place and get it all done, right? But go ahead. I'm sorry, Adam. I jumped in.
No, I was going to jump in on the warm introductions kind of hot button, and it's something that we think about a lot. And like when we're kind of creating OnePager, and when we were doing OpenScout before that, where the mission with OpenScout is actually to displace the need for warm introductions, kind of as our kind of North Star. But the way that we've talked about it too is that, you know, it's really a filtering mechanism for VC. Like for VCs want to do good deals. Like no VCs are like, oh, I hate good deals. Like they want to find, you know, some company that's got, you know, explosive MRR and like the users stay forever, and like people don't care as much, right? Where there's definitely a trust level as well to like, okay, actually getting a deal done and whatever, you know, knowing a guy who knows a guy. But what we found in our work with it is by just, you know, adding in those kind of basic filtering mechanisms that things like an Airtable form do, so that you can see, is this target for me? Like, is this a check that I would write for whatever reason, right? Is it the right size round, or do you lead or not lead? Is it a industry that I invest in? The ability for those tools to just kind of get scaled out a little bit is already such an awesome step in that direction, where investors in the past who had 100, you know, PDF pitch decks sitting next to them, and the way that they would decide which 10 to go through is like, okay, which guy, who do I know who sent me these? Like, okay, these 10 got sent to me by people I know. I'll go through these ones because they've already filtered it a little bit, right? Because they sent it to me because they know what I like, and then they sent it along, rather than, you know, the cold email inbox where you don't necessarily know. Whereas if you can add the same filters that are produced through a warm introduction, which is, you know, that warm introduction, they know generally what you're into, generally what your fund does, generally what type of checks they write, and they send it along and they say, hey, I think this is pretty target for you. You know, tech does that pretty well. Like in, you know, we look at like online dating, like it does it better than humans does it once it scales up. So I think we're really just at the beginning of that stuff, and it's super exciting to think about how much faster the process can move once a founder can know exactly who to talk to based on what they're building, based on where they're at, and on the investor side, an investor can, you know, scan 100 emails and say, these are the 10 that are really the target for me. And here's the next 10 that are a little less target, and the next 10 that are even less target than that, and then go through in that order based on, you know, the 24 hours in a day. So I think we're at a really cool kind of inflection point there, where the whole kind of market is starting to get tagged from like a data perspective, so that you can search it and sort it, and, you know, get recommendations based off of, you know, what you're into, and not based off of, you know, what country club you're in, or, you know, what the person looks like.
Yeah, it's interesting. Something that's been going on for a while on the kind of credit side is, if you've ever done a business credit application or personal credit application, they have these credit information collectors. So you go apply, and then they syndicate that application out to hundreds, thousands of different people that actually provide that credit. I'm now seeing these kind of information collectors being built more on the equity side of things. So venture, or, you know, revenue-based financing, or even grant type financing. But non-credit, you go as a founder, you say, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm looking for, and they syndicate out your information to VCs, alternative capital providers, etc. So I think we're just in the beginning stages of that, but we've seen it play out in the credit lending world, and it's just a natural progression to happen in the actual kind of equity world.
Yeah, and just to like double down on what Adam was saying about the data and what Will was alluding to as well, is that, you know, one of the big opportunities we see for government as it deploys capital is, and this relates to the VCs as well, is that, you know, the programs, and this is the similar for investors, the investors who have these like huge profiles, they just get inundated with applications. And, you know, you have these angels around the periphery and other groups who also write checks, and they just they don't see the deal flow. And so no code offers this really cool opportunity to build really efficient data pipelines with minimal investment, where you can get a high resolution of like data filtering and all of those things. And then you can deploy capital to the people that are, you know, that fit your thesis or that are in the spaces that you want to impact. And I think that's really one of like the really incredible sort of things that's happening with no code in relation to like these tools, is that all of a sudden we're seeing both like on the grant side, but also on the investment side, you're seeing these awesome pipelines of data being like just deployed. And for founders, it's great because, you know, no longer are you having to spend, you know, a long time, you know, as was talked about, emailing and cold emailing and reaching out. You can frequently, with like a few different tools like OnePager, DocSend, you can kind of replicate, make sure your data is all tagged out, and then just drop it in, you know, these different funnels. And it's a much more efficient way to find those folks that are going to invest.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, this conversation is a well-needed conversation. I don't know how many of these conversations, these panels have been happening during this time, but I mean, I'm so excited to even have you guys here doing this. So as we know, so Calendly, right? They just raised $350 million and became a unicorn worth $3 billion, right? What would you guys say makes a company a unicorn? Like what is that in 2021? What does that look like?
You know, I'm gonna take a controversial stance on that, my friend. Unicorns aren't real. So while we're attaching this to I rather invest in a zebra, and we can get into what that is. But I feel like, you know, what's interesting is that media has taught us that raising money is the end result, as opposed to building a great company. And the money you raise is part of that, the means to get you there, right? The adulation, the congratulations shouldn't be on I raised money. And I tell people that even about myself. When you're raising money, that's an obligation to your investors, to your company, to the people in your sector. So for me, it's like, you know, I appreciate when companies are growing big, but I also uber appreciate when companies have a really, and Jessica mentioned it, have a really good community of people who feel like they're not just customers, they're part of a community. And I hope that we move towards that way and stop getting this whole thing about like, you know, it's really weird to me, right? Because I think that's where you can have some fault. If you have a company that's capitalized well, that has a really great relationship with their customers, that's building this sense of community with their customers, they're going to automatically have some value for you, in my opinion. And I think that's just the direction we need to go. So I might take a controversial view on that, but I'd be welcome to hear other folks' thoughts on this unicorn idea.
No, I think I agree with you, because we are investing in the sports tech industry, and Peloton, for example, is a great example. But what we're doing also with our venture studio, and I think that's what you're also mentioning with the capital. Of course, capital is important, but where we believe it's much more than that, right? This is just a part. And where we believe in our vision with the venture studio is to see, okay, how can we help scale the company with a high involvement, not only the capital, but really see, okay, who are the founders, the team, and how can we bring this early stage startup, but that's where we're focusing on, that are very young companies, and make them ready for Series A. That's a super important journey, but it's not only about the money. It's much more than that. And then, of course, you want to have the unicorn, but yeah, it's a whole process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would just say for me, what's more exciting to me than the $350 million that Calendly raised is the fact that in 2000 and 2020, they had 70 million in reoccurring revenue. The previous year, they had 60 million. That's a number that I'm more excited about. And I come from in my past life in bootstrap tech companies that got to multi-millions of dollars in revenue with no venture dollars behind us. And that's a really exciting ride. It's really hard when you don't have, you know, a lot of dry powder to go through. It makes you work really, really, really hard. Not to say that founders who have a lot of capital don't work really hard, but it's a different kind of thing if you know that you have money, only a certain amount of money, and it could possibly run out and you're not going to be able to pay your bills. And the only way that you're going to be able to get capital is if you sell your product, if there is enough people who are willing to pay for it. And so revenue is really exciting to me. And companies that are category or industry defining, companies that like change the game, like in a way that nobody else has. And so those two things are really exciting, which I'll agree with Taj. I believe in zebras, not unicorns. And those zebras have multiple different types of stripes. And I hope that one of those stripes is revenue and the other one is that it is category defining in its space.
Oh, we are preaching today, aren't we? Huh? I love it.
Yes. I'm going to agree with. Yeah, I was going to agree with Taj and Qiana in that, you know, I thought we were done with unicorns after WeWork. You know, I think WeWork, you know, taught us that a lot of this is just I'm really terrible at idioms, but smoke and mirrors. Right, all these like valuations and, you know, this and that the invested amount of capital, like Qiana was saying and Taj were saying, is just that it doesn't tell you really what's happening. And the question I keep going back to, and this might be because I'm in impact investing, is in the race to become a unicorn, what's lost, right? What are we sacrificing? And I'll agree with you, Qiana, in that what I find exciting is that revenue, like that steady growth, as well as the impact aspect of it, right? Are we actually creating a valuable product for the communities and the populations that we're looking to serve? And is that also growing? Or again, in this race for just capital or growth or for the PR, are we kind of sacrificing that and leaving that as an afterthought? So I think that's how I feel about unicorns.
So I'll pose kind of a follow-up question because it is a quote unquote VC panel, but the VC model kind of needs those unicorns, right? It needs the power law portfolio. Like that's what the business model is based off of. You know, a third, fail, do okay, and then the rest return the portfolio. And that I think is what is perpetuated the need for this growth at all costs. That combined with money being very cheap, money being very abundant, you know, a 12, 15-year bull run. I agree that zebras are good businesses, and, you know, my company can invest in any type of business. And you saw Indie VC and some of these others that can invest in those types of businesses. And those are good kind of capital sources that align well with those businesses. But I'm trying to figure out, you've got all of these venture capital firms that need those unicorns and need that growth. How does that align with building, you know, a maybe slower growing, still strong, but slower growing kind of cash flow business? Just love to kind of throw that out there to maybe traditional VC type investors.
Yeah, not a traditional VC investor here, but I think you're right. There is this dynamic within VC that's sort of what's required. One company out of an entire portfolio will return the fund, if that. But I do want to say that like the track record of VC in general is not that. It's not nearly that good. In fact, 3x is kind of like really good for the industry, which is kind of makes you realize why it's such a risky asset class or, you know, thing to invest in. So there is a question of like whether, you know, smaller returns, but sort of more of them and a higher survival rate could sort of actually balance out that sort of overall portfolio aspect. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a really good point you make, Will, that like that is part of it. And then it's sort of the cultural side that everyone kind of woke up to. By the way, if someone's watching and they don't know why we're talking about like animals or whatever, it's like, so unicorns grow at all costs, right? They're the in multi-billion-dollar company. It used to be a $1 billion company, Lorel, to your question, but now it's like 2 to 3 billion, anything from 1 to 1+ billion. And that was the outcome that VCs were looking for. Zebras fix what unicorns break was sort of the original premise. Ania Wiliams and Mata Zepeda were like, the folks who sort of coined that term. And it was about prioritizing, like Qiana said, revenue and sustainability. So really, really good for the economy and the founders who found those companies. But there's not quite a fit yet sort of in the market for capitalizing those kinds of companies. But there are folks on this panel who are working on those exact problems.
Which is crazy to me. So go ahead.
Oh no, this is definitely way more up your alley. I'm an observer in this part of it.
I was just going to mention, so, one of the postmortems that Bryce, one of the founders of IndieVC put out, talked about his returns that weren't necessarily, GAAP returns, but it was in the ballpark of, 40+% IRRs, which is insane returns. Yep. And so I had a hard time wrapping my head around how can you not find LP capital if those are the types of returns that you can actually get with that model. So I'm still trying to kind of parse through the whole IndieVC shutting down.
It's really funny you brought that up, because that's literally exactly what I was about to pull up. That postmortem is exactly what I was about to point to. And I think that what it was really interesting, and I think maybe Taj or Qiana will have a stronger sense of these actual LP conversations, but like, and I have friends that have kind of done that type of stuff before, and I've heard that of like the risk profile of that money, because like that money that they're putting into your fund is only part of their larger portfolio, right? So if you're like and this is just me, I was thinking of it of like that 40%, if that risk profile isn't what they were looking for you to do with it, it doesn't necessarily make sense. Like they're getting, and there was some presentation that I read and I gave to my scouts a long time ago that it's like VCs get paid to take huge risk, like they need it to be really risky. They don't care if you lose the fund. They don't really care about 20% though. Also, they think that needs to either be negative and it didn't work out, or it needs to be gigantic. And rather than that kind of middle of the road, like really solid by really any kind of general means, but not fit to that chunk of an LP's like allocation going into other companies. And I think that like, with Chisos, with other, it's cool to see that there's this new kind of class forming of capital providers that are set for those types of companies, as this world of like startups and like SMBs, like as Jessica mentioned earlier, like there's kind of this like who's a startup founder, which is technically like growth oriented, like the YC kind of slide that they have about it is like startup equals growth. And there's been this kind of preaching of like startup equals entrepreneurship. So then everyone who's in entrepreneurship thinks like, oh, I need to be a startup and I need to grow really fast. And it's cool to have people start to unlearn like entrepreneurship doesn't necessarily mean growth. Like it can mean sustainable. It can mean like side hustle. It can mean me, running my own small business, like a tech enabled small business. But that like from a risk profile perspective, and then it just all filters back into that LP kind of conversation of, okay, well, I'm giving you $10 million, $20 million here. What type of risk return are we talking about here? Because if we're talking about 10%, 20%, there's other people that do that better in the market than someone that's involved in the startup ecosystem. But again, I think, Taj and Qiana maybe have better, more experience in those conversations than me.
Yeah, I think, I think what's also happening too is that, at least for us and what we've been championing is that the current LPs have had years to get this fixed and haven't. So I'll be honest, I'm not here for performative. Let's fix it, diversity. You had a chance to do it. Get other people in here that's going to take a return and take a risk. For me, there's a lot of capital allocators that are honestly lazy. They're lazy. They're lazy and not trying to look into investments that will make sense for their own returns and for their capital. and they're just doing what's been there. So I think there's going to be a new generation of investors from the entertainment industry, from the sports industry. They're looking to help and to fund great founders and great fund managers. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I was going to note too, like when you were posing your question, Adam, it's just like, and to your point, Taj, now that we're changing so much in the expectation of what a unicorn looks like or doesn't look like, right? And the proliferation of zebras, and if we take into account the way in which investors, the meaning of what an investor means, has changed so much and will continue to change. I wonder if the ideal company will continue to be a unicorn, or if it will be a zebra, or if it will be any other animal, because we're seeing so many different types of startups come out of the woodworks.
You guys took that question and ran with it. That was great. I love it. So another question that I really want to ask, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before we came on, was like with venture capital revolutionizing and a disruption of the VC landscape, we now see alternative capital raises, equity crowdfunding, and non-dilutive funding taking off. What impacts do you guys see that having on new ideas that are emerging?
Well, certainly, I think with the non-dilutive capital, and certainly we're doing that, testing a model out here in Los Angeles with our Fund for South LA Founders, is that we acknowledge that we knew that genius was equally spread across zip codes, meaning there are founders found everywhere. There's grit and there's hustle everywhere, but opportunity to actually, making those dreams come true or starting that startup was much, much harder. And that those founders who are coming from those situations where capital doesn't easily flow needed to essentially have a new set of friends and family members, right? Who could write small check sizes from $10,000, $15,000 to $25,000 to say, we want to seed your idea and you don't owe us anything in return. We believe in you, the founder. We still vetted them the same exact way. We still wanted them to have a solid business, a solid plan, a solid, even have already started and built their technology or their business. But we knew that that is something that multiple groups and communities don't actually have. And so while we started with Black and Brown founders in South LA, we want to expand that, because the reality is I don't want to just fill my portfolio with Black and Brown founders. I want to say, where are my Samoan founders? Do I have a Tongan founder in my portfolio? Do I have a Vietnamese founder in my portfolio? And so when we think about people as a monolith, we get very, very narrow. And I think that understanding and recognizing that most people don't have the startup capital, which is oftentimes friends and family, to actually get started. So the more that we drive those small dollar checks to really ambitious founders early on, I believe that we are going to see a greater diversification of our founder and startup ecosystem, without a doubt. If people could just be given $25,000 and a network of advisors and other founders, imagine what would happen. And imagine that happens not just in LA and New York, but it happens in Tulsa, and it happens in St. Louis, and it happens in Little Rock, and it happens in the Appalachians. Imagine what will happen to our startup ecosystem and the problems that we need to have solved in our world.
I'm taking down some of what you said for my future pitches, by the way.
Yeah, you sound like you work at OpenGrants, Qiana.
Hey, have me, hire me.
All right. You don't have to ask twice. You're hired. I just want to double down on what Qiana was saying, that there's not only is like from a standpoint of just general diversity, equity, and inclusion, is this a good idea? But and this is at core at the OpenGrants platform, is all of the statistics behind deploying capital in the exact format that Qiana just mentioned, just point to better returns, point to better economic impacts, better results, and better performance of the fund over time. And we've actually even been piloting even a blind lottery. So the only vetting that we're doing on the front end is really just a sort of KYC to gate like fraud and that kind of thing. But other than that, the statistics say that, hey, if you just have a lottery system running and you're deploying, 25 to 50K checks into a ecosystem of entrepreneurs, you're going to seed an incredible group of folks who can then be, then they can be funneled into maybe more of these other kind of data funnels that we're talking about, where they're raising like seed stage capital. But grants up front as non-dilutive capital for founders is just like an incredible way to really, realize the economic potential of overlooked human capital. And that's at the core of the OpenGrants platform. Is really that, is like removing bias and really like deploying seed capital the way that it actually should be deployed, which is you're supposed to be seeding the ground. There's no other decisioning that should be happening. And so that's really what our platform is all about, and core to what we're building. I think that it's a huge part of like beginning to stir up this data, and then as we optimize over time with funds being able to quickly filter and find where they want to deploy capital and follow on. I think that then you grow a really healthy economic engine that is inclusive and diverse and representative of the people.
I think back to bringing it back to no code, technology and capital are kind of two of the biggest drivers of entrepreneurship. And as no code is really democratizing that technology piece, you don't have to have a CS degree. You don't have to know how to code anymore to use these tools and get your company off the ground. You can build tons of MVPs with all of these no code tools. That combined with these other alternative capital options that are starting to proliferate, from crowdfunding to flexible VC, et cetera. I think then thinking of it now, you throw in a third unfortunate thing, which is the pandemic and people losing jobs, or just thinking, hey, I don't want to be in this job. I want to, do something on my own. That whole mixture is just explosive for entrepreneurship. And I hope it continues kind of as we move past the pandemic. But yeah, I think tons of new companies, tons of exciting new ideas really starting to come out and be worked on.
Yeah, maybe one topic to add, if you're talking about disruption of the VC model, what we believe in is the venture building model, right? So to see, okay, how can we help founders? Because they're putting so much time in raising capital. And don't get me wrong, I think it's a good thing as a founder to show that you really are passionate and get the capital. But what we're doing with the venture builder model is more from, okay, we have on the one hand, we have experienced entrepreneurs in the team and specialists who can help scale the company, and we have the fund available. And then we say, okay, we work in 3 phases. So if you hit your KPIs or milestones in the first phase, for example, you get 150K, then you go to the second phase, you need to hit your KPIs and milestones, you get the second part, and then you go to the third phase. And that's what we believe in. Okay, one, you have the capital available, so you have that part covered, and on the other hand, you get the knowledge and experience to scale the company. And we don't want to lead the company, definitely not. We're looking for strong founders, but it's really about, okay, let's do it together, right? I think there's so much knowledge and experience, and then build and scale a company together.
Yeah, and I'll mention too that I think it's so beautiful and important that you, Lorel, that you and anybody else who organized this panel, that you featured folks from such different avenues of capital, because I think anybody that's watching this, is welcome and encouraged to pursue entrepreneurship, encouraged to pursue becoming a founder, and even encouraged to pursue becoming an investor through crowdfunding and otherwise, right? And I think the rewriting of rules and us really introducing different forms of different tools, different capital, and different ways of becoming part of this ecosystem really revitalizes and brings creativity that was needed a long time ago.
Yeah, and shout out to all the folks who are watching. I'm getting notes from LinkedIn. Hello, everyone. Definitely, I think also too, what I hope is that we return back to this idea that being an entrepreneur is about solving problems. I think for so long, everybody's been like, well, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur just to make money, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, you solve a problem, you solve a big enough problem. That's why we know about product market fit. it'll be capital for you. You get paid for it. You do it right. You have people like us as investors partnering with that. So I hope that we get back to a purposeful piece of it where we're building with a purpose to really solve problems. I'll tell you this, being in clean tech along with Adriana, what we noticed is that when the pandemic hit, all the unicorn stuff is out the window, right? All this stuff got delayed, and we put all the emphasis on really kind of reducing that, right? But let me tell you something. There is no vaccine for climate change, right? And so the whole idea that we're saying is that there's a lot of problems out there that need to be solved that we could put some money towards. And I think what we're also seeing too, is really interesting, is that the combination of grants like Sedale has mentioned, both from philanthropic sources, catalytic capital from government agencies, combined with capital from the investment community. I think you're going to see a lot more of that, where the company's going to be truly solving these issues and solving problems, and that's where they're going to go. And I think putting it back to No Code Week is great, because this is going into, like somebody has said, democratize this opportunity for people to be entrepreneurs. Look, I was a poetry major when I was in undergrad. And even though my graduate degree is in economics, that did not stop me from wanting to be a founder and from learning. And I think to all the folks who may not be engineers, all the folks who are watching this who may not be on the science side, but have a really good idea about the problem you can solve, I think things like this are really dedicated to you to really kind of partner and figure out what's the future of this work and be with your product.
You touched a little bit on your college experience, and I think it's been brought up here a few times of like, what you study, or who gets to be a founder based on like what their background looks like, and how no code has been a big part of just making it more accessible in terms of actually getting something out the door. And I think there's an interesting conversation to be had too around, like, I think universities have played a role in what they have, because there was this like, okay, all of a sudden entrepreneurship needs to be part of your curriculum because it's like a big thing now. All of a sudden, it's not like this crazy thing. Like all these guys made so much money with these big companies that we all use every day that all of a sudden these schools are thinking to themselves like, okay, I should probably have an entrepreneurial program of some sort. That's happened like over the course of 10, 20 years where schools, didn't care about it, to now they're like, okay, what type of entrepreneurship courses can we teach? And even within those conversations, and I hear a lot about it through the Scout program, VC gets kind of like, that's the route. Like, that's how you can go. That's what a startup is. That's what entrepreneurship is. And it's going to be really interesting. And I think like these types of conversations are really important. And people like Taj, right? Like, people who are leaders in the space, talking about what, the zebra and not just the unicorn, and having that kind of get pushed down into young entrepreneurs, early stage entrepreneurs who are just kind of getting going to like, what does success look like? What should you be aiming at? And I think it'll be interesting to see kind of within universities or within just kind of the general, I do think that there's a bit, even like within the no code, I think the no code movement is kind of not famous for this, but I tie it with like the revenue movement, right? Of like, you should be making some money rather than, and a lot of no code founders who are like very proud of, not needing money or not needing investment. And I think that I just want to bring up kind of within the entrepreneurship scene and the tie to like the university system, how I definitely think that there's a need for a re-education of the educational programs around like what an entrepreneurship program should look like, and how, teaching a kid that they need to be $1 billion company because Snapchat got started at Stanford and look at how cool those guys are, compared to like, you can make $100 grand, $200 grand a year, with a business, and that would be a huge success for you to like own for an individual to own that type of business. Whereas a VC, could care less about a 200K, ARR business, if that's the end goal.
Yeah, and I would say it's so like, I'm so glad that you mentioned the whole university and the school system thing as well, because it's very important to now, with technology emerging so much and things like no code coming in, to really be able to teach our younger generations faster and sooner in building up their entrepreneurship, right? And that's one of the things that we really want to focus on, even in StartupStarter, is just being able to figure out how can we show this younger generation of idea makers how to build a company. And so we're implementing some programs with universities and high schools as well within our StartupStarter community that'll help them there. And I'm sorry, who did I jump in on?
No, me, and I'll be quick. I think, Adam, you brought up a great point. I think demystifying entrepreneurship is so important. I wrote this paper at business school around like entrepreneurship and that topic because, you know, for me, entrepreneurship had been so like glorified and kind of romanticized. But when I really like sat down and thought of like who the most entrepreneurial people I knew were, like the two people, you know, that I think of even now, like in my top 5 are my mom, right, who's an undocumented immigrant, but because she needed to survive, we were, you know, out there selling like empanadas door to door and getting creative about how we were going to make money and, you know, starting like small businesses. And, you know, my little cousin who's in community college, who's not in this like, you know, Stanford like I did, who's really like supporting her mother and, you know, created a small business, you know, taught herself how to make clay earrings and is now like selling it on like, you know, TikTok and on Instagram and set up an Etsy store. And she taught all this to herself, right? By herself, like some support, you know, asking questions, but by herself. And I think when I think of the power of no code, those are the people I think of. Right. And, you know, for me, when I measure like what would be a successful kind of entrepreneurship path in like colleges or just generally, I think of, you know, my younger brother who's currently incarcerated, who doesn't have access to computers, who when he gets out may not know how to code, may not even know what a laptop looks like at that time. Right. But who could still solve a problem if he wanted to, because we created these tools now for him to be able to do that. And so that's kind of the vision that I have for tools and resources moving forward.
I love it. I love it.
And let me touch on real quick. I wanted to piggyback on what Jessica said. Jessica and I have two are aligned in this. Not only we're both from Texas, but we also believe in the entrepreneurial spirit of people who are formerly incarcerated. When we talk about diversity, we typically always talk about gender and race, but we leave out all these other intersectionalities like Adriana mentioned, from age, from people with disabilities, and people who are formerly incarcerated. As an example, there's a company called Very Cool, with a guy who dropped out of school in 8th grade, former Crip, went to prison, got out, had a number of patents with this product, raised $16 million last year, and really just doing fantastically well. And I think, you know, that's another population to Jessica's point that will benefit from no code, because they may have the ideas, they may have all these things, but they might not have the technical expertise. And I think that's going to really kind of solve it. So shout out to folks like Defy Ventures, who's doing a lot of work there, Concreates and all these others. They're taking care of those populations of formerly incarcerated. They're maybe building some great companies.
For sure. Yeah. And I wouldn't be a child of my father if I didn't mention veterans either. My dad, you know, was poor of the poor from Puerto Rico, and then got drafted and left to go fight in all these different wars for the U.S. And I think veterans, and to y'all's point, the intersectional approaches of just so many people who are left out of so many systems, right? If we think of citizenship, if we think of the carceral system and the justice system, if we think of the U.S. military complex, it's just incredible to see the different micro communities, to your point, Jessica, earlier, of just like different incubators, accelerators, venture groups, venture studios supporting folks who have developed entrepreneurial skill sets throughout their life experiences, and through experiences that they may not have chosen, but that have made them entrepreneurs, or will contribute to them becoming founders of their own. So definitely shout out to all of those organizations that are doing a huge job of building our next generation of founders.
Yeah, that's Adriana, that's great, and to be able to represent that as well. I have one last question, and I just want to hear what's next for you guys. But this is a question that I really want to make sure that we got to. There's always been this stigma of founders needing to be technical, or like getting accepted to like major accelerators has like required that to happen, right? Do you guys see a change in the investment landscape for non-technical founders with the emergence of no code? And we can answer this quick as well, because I know we're coming up on time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Go for it, Will. It sounds like we agree.
Yeah, mine is quick. It's absolutely. I mean, what we're looking for is, you know, hustle. Can this person have the grit, ambition to solve the problem? And being technical is no longer really a barrier, because you can use these no-code tools. So absolutely.
Yeah, there's also just new models in terms of, D2C companies that can become startups, that don't even emphasize sort of tech from day one. The biggest challenges of certain businesses is not the tech. That's not always the case. And I think it's more now about like, do you have the appropriate team for what you're doing and the appropriate tools to be able to build that? Everything else is probably like leftover bias. But I bet there still are a lot of VCs, traditional VCs who still maintain that idea that you have to have somebody technical on a team to do a tech startup. But I think it's becoming, very common for folks not to require that.
And I'll bring a little bit of a contrarian opinion here, just to say that, and it really is actually more in alignment, I guess, with what Bryan just mentioned, that there are certainly, like, as you think about your team, I think initially as you raise, there might not be a need for that technical founder, but I think investors still do want to see, especially if you're tackling a technical problem, that you have a plan to, at some point, no code stops working to solve your problems. And I think there's definitely limitations with the no code tools that exist now. And so making sure that as entrepreneurs, they're getting the support and have the wherewithal to plan and tell that story about the team that they're going to bring on. I think that's important, as well as recognizing the limitations of no code. Even though it can take you pretty far, there's definitely places where it stops being useful.
Thank you guys so much. So real quick, I want to, as we're coming up on time, real quick, and Adam, I'll let you go first because I know you got to hop immediately. What's next? What's next for OnePager? What's next for In-Studio Ventures? Everyone, jump in real quick and tell me what's next for you guys.
Really quick, we have a big launch on the 31st, actually. So, I mean, we're primarily a software company. So with that being the case, I think maybe a little bit differently, kind of cycle-wise, from other people on the call. Have a big launch kind of coming up on the 31st, just new features for our users and continuing to kind of build in. We're lucky to have a lot of just requests from founders on what they want to be able to do, how they want to be able to tell their story, to make it easier for them to send one link and that be all it takes for the person on the receiving end of that to understand what they're trying to do, who they are, where they're trying to go, what they might need to get there from the person reading it. Just kind of focusing there and continuing to build in. And we run investor days every month. So we had one for our OnePager users. I mentioned it earlier, but I'll throw a link. I'll put it to Lorel and he can kind of put it in the email. But for founders kind of watching or anyone kind of looking for that type of stuff, we have another one coming up next month, and it's available to all OnePager users. So with that, I really appreciate it, everybody, guys, and it was awesome to hear everybody.
And we'll be hosting Meet the VCs coming soon with OnePager as well, so you guys look up for that.
All right, bye, everybody.
And who's next?
I'll go next because I have to hop off. But investments at NMB for Q2. We have a flexible funding structure, which means we can invest in C3, C4, and for-profit, as well as give grants to for-profits. So we invest across media and narrative, civic engagement, so CivTech, and movement organizations, so progressive movement orgs. So Laura, I'm sure will send out my info, but excited to get to know a few of you and look forward to being part of the StartupStarter community. Thanks, everyone.
Congratulations on your new role as well, and I'll reach out to you. We'll connect separately.
Bye.
Danny, you have some good news that's recent, so yes, why don't you go next?
Yeah, no, we are focusing on the fund. That's a big thing for us. What I mentioned, so together with Lead, the grandchildren of Adi Dassler, that's for us super exciting to invest in the sports tech industry together with them. They have their own academy in Berlin and Lake Nona. So the startups can join the program in the academy, and then they will join a program for 18 months. So that's our big next thing.
I can go next. I am at the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator. So if you're working on, bye Danny, if you're working on climate change, clean tech, if you're daring to be bold and really help us think about this crazy world that we're living in, feel free to reach out. I'm also a scout for Vamos Ventures, which is a fund in Los Angeles working to invest in underrepresented founders. So definitely. And if you have a company and you're thinking about starting it or you want to get into venture, always happy to talk about that as well.
And as the other LACI, I'll piggyback, and what I'm about to get into is this sandwich right here because I haven't eaten all day. But definitely, as Adriana said, we definitely want to see, especially communities of color and people from communities of color, enter into the sustainability space. There's a lot of great ideas, even if you're still at the napkin stage or really kind of figuring it out. There's programs we have for you on the innovator side, and even if you're a small business and you're thinking about sustainability or your impact, we have a program for you as well. Definitely, we're hoping to finalize and formally launch and start making investments with Include Ventures by Q4. Looking for some great fund managers, fund ones, fund twos, fund threes. And as always, looking for the great growth of StartupStarter. I'm happy that the LA ecosystem is definitely growing. And we got things like Pledge LA, Grid 110, all these partners that I love that we work with.
Yeah. Bryan?
I can jump in. Sure. Thanks everybody for sticking with us through the end here. It's been a pleasure speaking with everybody on this panel. You can find what I'm up to at the studio. So makestudios.co is where we're at. If you are an idea stage founder and you're looking for a tech partner to help you get your idea and bring it to life and get to customer revenue, like the zebra style we were talking about earlier, or unicorn, whichever style, please come and say hi. And especially if you're an idea stage founder working on validation with no code tools, I definitely want to talk to you. I used to work at Zapier. I love, sort of getting to market and helping you figuring out how to talk to customers. So please come find me. I'm easy to find on Twitter, LinkedIn, everywhere else. And I hope to hear from you.
I'll go next. I really have enjoyed, to Bryan's point, this conversation and being amongst really, truly exceptional human beings. It's always an honor. And in given COVID, it's a welcome relief to be amongst such amazing people. What's next for me is, I'm going to continue to back ambitious founders who are charting new paths and making a way somehow for themselves. And hopefully with my operational expertise and my network, I can help them do that. Eventually I think I will raise my own fund. And so you might see me on the fundraising trail, starting around Q4 into Q1 of next year. But really excited to be on this journey and deploy as much capital as I can with the money that I have now. So thank you so much.
Will and Sedale.
All right, I guess I'll go. Yeah, we've got a ton coming up. Just say this panel was really fun. It was great to talk with everyone. Everyone's doing some really cool stuff. Just in general, the early stage space and the experimentation is super exciting. In terms of Chisos and finding Chisos, Chisos.io, Chisos.io, Chisos Capital on Twitter. We've got a couple big announcements coming up. I won't go into it for various reasons, but we'll be announcing it on the socials in a couple weeks. So thanks, Lorel, for pulling this together. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for inviting us. I think, our next move is to hire Qiana and then go from there. But no, we do have, for entrepreneurs and folks who are watching, we will be running some demonstrations of that lottery that I did mention. So if you hop over to OpenGrants.io, create a profile, you'll be in great shape to receive some capital. So we're working with a few partners on that. I'm really excited to really just start demonstrating how this lottery-based approach to deploying capital can generate better returns, and that grants is just like the friendliest and best way to start to seed the ground and drive economic growth. So yeah, that's kind of like the big stuff that we're pushing in Q3, I should say. Yeah, just excited about the future of non-dilutive capital for really seeding the ground and moving the economy forward.
Yeah. I really thank you guys for sticking in here. Thank you to the audience for sticking in and watching this with us. Again, this is recorded. This will be housed on our YouTube channel. This will also be housed in our community for anyone to go back. It'll also be housed in our Learn section, so you can learn all the cool no-code tools throughout the week. Thank you guys so much. I mean, we partnered. A lot of you guys have been rocking with StartupStarter since we started, and I really appreciate you guys for everything you guys do, always jumping in and willing to help, and I look forward to working with all of you. Qiana, thank you so much as well. I followed you since I moved to LA. I've been following you. I've been on panel. I've seen you on many panels, so it's great to have you on mine. I really appreciate all of you guys for being here, and yeah, until next time. Yeah,
thanks so much.
Okay. Wow. So we've had an amazing No Code Week conference, hearing from brands like Apps Without Code, We Are No Code, Adalo, Bubble, Tapcart, Typeform, Airtable, Softer, and Video Apps by Typeform, including live no coding and building from Brand Factory and no code makers. So much has happened. So we heard from founder stories like Bubble and others, founder stories by products by women like Softer and StoryPlace, and had workshops to show idea makers how they can build their idea, iterate, and launch faster. So thank you for joining. You can refer back to all of our great workshops and events from No Code Week by subscribing on YouTube and at StartupStarter TV. Get exclusive perks and deals from everything that you've seen on No Code and these tools by creating a profile at www.startupstarter.co/join. Thank you to all of our sponsors, Tapcart, XYZ, ParlayMe, Beam Conference, and Video Apps by Typeform for making this event happen for us. There is so much to come for StartupStarter in the coming months, so keep up to date. We are working to democratize entrepreneurship and connecting the dots for idea makers, founders, investors, and service providers. So also be on the lookout for StartupStarter Presents Accelerator Week coming up. That is our next big event, and we want all of you to be there. On behalf of StartupStarter, we thank you for joining StartupStarter Presents No Code Week, and until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care.
I love driving with HopeSkipDrive because I absolutely adore the kids.
They're the best. They just make my day. I have 25 years of experience in child care.
I have 3 adult children and 8 grandchildren, so that gives me a lot of experience. I also used to be a tutor and an educational aide years ago.
I'm Claudia, your care driver, and your passport is happy?
Yes.
Drivers are usually really, really nice and friendly, and they make me feel really comfortable.
Most of us are moms or caregivers. I know that the security measures that they take to ensure that we are safe drivers for the kids makes me feel more comfortable as a driver.
You know, my passcode, they talk to me, they make me feel very welcome. I'm never nervous to get in. In fact, I usually look forward to it because it's a lot of fun.
I love driving for HopeSkipDrive because it makes me feel safe as a driver. I have a support staff that's always on call.
If something goes wrong, you can pick up the phone and they will tell you what to do. It's awesome because you're always feeling secure.
HopeSkipDrive makes sure that I have a good ride and safe ride.
I feel really empowered being part of the greater good, getting kids safely where they really need to go.
The best place that the care drivers take me is home, for sure.
This is Jane. Jane's got an online store and she's doing pretty good.
Crushing it.
But like every store owner, Jane wants an app.
I want an app.
You need an app.
I can't build an app.
But she could. With Tapcart, she was able to design and launch the perfect app for her brand without having to deal with her developer. Now Jane can spend more time on the things she loves, being creative, connecting with her customers, and collecting sweaters for her dog, Sadie. Hey, Sadie.
Watch this.
Tapcart enables Jane to send these interactive push notifications directly to her customers, getting them back in the app and making purchases. Back on top. So what's next?
Flash sale.
Updating her app is a breeze. Add new blocks, feature a sale, share new content from anywhere. Plus, Tapcart keeps her app up to date with the latest technology. So no more dealing with this guy. This is the future, Jane.
Yep. on the future.
Your brand, your products, your app. TapCart.
The .xyz community is made up of celebrated artists and creative outlets, acclaimed entertainers and designers, award-winning professionals and industry leaders, game-changing communities and organizations, and forward-thinking businesses discovering tomorrow's next big breakthroughs. The word is out, and the world is spoken. .xyz is the domain for the next generation. Build a winning online presence with a domain that knows no bounds. Join the revolution. Get your .xyz today.
How you ask is important. With Typeform, it's everything. If you're lazy or got better things to do, pick a template and get on with your day. Ask any kind of question you want, because business doesn't have to mean business as usual. That means you can make it brainy and efficient, or silly and fun. Your Typeform, your rules. Make every interaction count, from start to send. You can keep things simple and tidy if you want, or use the image gallery and look for eye candy. When others zig, you zag. Connect Typeform straight into your workflow and save your future self some headache. When you're done, just share the link or embed it into your site without writing a single line of code. With Typeform, you can pick someone's brain and look like a pro. It's easy to use and free to get started.
A stronger relationship with my customers means better business, but it's hard with just email and a website to have a human connection. So that's why I want to show you Video Ask. Video Ask is a new way to engage with people through interactive video conversations, like this one. You just record yourself like I did, then you share it as a link or embed it on your website. People can respond with video or audio, or you can give them options to choose from. For example, hi there, nice to meet you. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Tim.
Awesome. Now I can follow up with another pre-recorded question. What's your role?
I'm a product marketer. I'm a product marketer.
When someone answers, their response goes straight to the Video Ask inbox. And the audio is transcribed so you can search for it later.
I'm a product marketer.
And when I want to carry on the conversation, I can easily reply with a Video Ask. Hi, Tim. You can also start a follow-up Video Ask with any of your respondents and keep the conversation going asynchronously. You can use it to qualify leads, collect testimonials, for recruitment, and much more. So that's Video Ask. Want to try it out?